Let me start this episode by asking Suchita, have you seen the circus trailer?
What is circus trailer?
Rohit Shetty's next movie.
Oh my God.
Where he
Varun, on
say
a scale of
where one of my
0
favorite
to 10
characters
is what?
say समुंदर में सुसु करके सुनामी नहीं होता.
What the hell? Where do you find these
It's a
hidden
Rohit
gems
Shetty
from,
movie. How
bro?
can you not watch the trailer? A Rohit Shetty movie with two Ranveer Singhs. There is double
Oh
role Ranveer
my
Singh.
God. Who
It's
is
going to be
Ranveer?
nuts.
Who is the second Ranveer Singh? Oh, like his
Oh,
like
the two Ranveer
CGI.
Singhs.
Oh,
Yeah,
they
it's
made.
a no,
Oh
it's a
my
double role,
God.
double role. But
Jesus.
always, if you have, I don't know why you've never seen a Rohit Shetty movie, but the best part about those movies are the supporting characters who are all pretty
Uh-huh.
much playing the same part in all his movies. But that's the part which is the most fun to watch. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. It's gonna be fun.
I love the way you basically like start every episode with a piece of information that I could have been totally okay not
Yes.
knowing. But actually, that one line's won me over, man. That
Yeah.
line is like the type of shit that I would say.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, like this, like,
Yeah.
Susu, Samundar,
Yeah.
Tsunami sounds
But
like
it's a
right
great
up
line.
my
समुद्र में सुसु
alley.
करके सुनामी नहीं होता. Like I'm like that is like legendary writing.
Varun, didn't you write this line? Don't you know
I
Rohit
wish I
Shetty?
did. I wish I did. There was a time when I wanted to, and it still might eventually some point of time. If I ever had to write a movie, I would write this specific genre of movie, which is Rohit Shetty genre.
Great. Can I start? Can I? My contribution to this introduction is going to be a big thank you, by the way, to all our amazing listeners. How much love did we get on like Spotify Wrapped
So
drop?
much. Oh my god.
So much love. By the way, did this podcast get more like general mentions than Take a Pause or your other stepchildren?
Jacob has got a lot of pensions as well.
Okay, no, but like if you had to compare the two,
Mhm.
Think Fast, I think topped it.
Think
Think
Fast
Fast was
and
like
Take a
number one.
Pause were kind of even Steven, is what I like to call it.
Oh my God. Wow. But I mean, also one caveat over there, which I realized once I saw your stories. Take a Pause has 91 episodes.
Yeah. Because
That's
we do like
insane.
2 episodes a week.
Wow. Dude, that's like a lot of content.
Yeah, that we do 2 episodes a week, of which one is audio only, and
Hmm.
there's also a specific video episode that only goes on YouTube.
Yeah.
Plus, we do some other stuff also around it. So there's a lot happening on that.
Oh my God. Varun keeps
So
busy,
please check my
guys.
YouTube
Varun.
channel. Lots of stuff dropping this weekend. That's my
Acha.
recommendation at the
Plugging,
start of the
plugging.
episode.
Don't worry. I have another. I have a plug to make this week, guys. But you'll have to wait till the end of the episode to hear that. But what's
This is
happened
like the
this week,
beginning
man?
has been the most random plug ever. Since 3 minutes in, we're still plugging things. But what happened? What happened this week?
Where do I begin? First up,
Are
WhatsApp
you a person who
rolls out.
WhatsApp yourself?
Oh my God.
Are you a person who
Varun.
WhatsApps yourself?
No, I don't. Am I a person that WhatsApp myself? No, I am not. I
But
like,
now
put
WhatsApp is
notes.
allowing you to WhatsApp yourself. So if you feel
Yes.
like saying, hey, you to yourself, you can
Oh,
say,
hey, hey, you.
you.
Long time. समुंदर में सुसु करके सुनामी नहीं होता है. You, myself, me, and I.
I can
Yeah, no,
finally
but
tell
you had
Pooja to
a.
stop messaging me random things so that she can save that document and message herself.
Yes, Pooja, please make note.
Yes.
In other news, this Merck says that competitors, mutual funds, and other unique competition cases. What did you make of this amazing piece of news that made it to print?
So I thought, I mean, for the head of, I think it was the head of Mercedes-Benz India, right, who said this. Um, it is a very random statement to make, but he also kind of shows the power of personal finance content. And just generally how much more people have gotten into investing is that instead of buying luxury items, people are investing into mutual funds.
Hmm.
I think it's a good thing. It's good that people aren't buying like luxury items and are investing. Um, it's good for them. It's good for the market overall. Don't buy Mercedes. Buy mutual fund.
No, please don't say such things. What if Mercedes wants to sponsor this podcast, Varun?
It's
Come
okay.
on.
I already have
Buy
one.
whatever you like, guys. Buy what, and if you have enough money, you can do both. You can invest in mutual funds and buy Mercedes. So,
मेरे पास
chase
है
that
already. मेरे
lifestyle.
पास है.
Acha, okay, great. Anything else you want to show off about in the start of this episode? Do you know आपके पास क्या नहीं है, Varun?
क्या नहीं है मेरे पास.
Bisleri, bro, Bisleri. Tata has acquired Bisleri. I know this is old news, and
Hmm.
sorry guys, we took a bit of a hiatus last week because I had some shit going on. But this acquisition was not 7,000 crores.
Also, what a great story, right? If you think about it, I
Yeah,
mean, there was so much going around online about this, the story of the founder, how it's the same person who kind of sold to Coca-Cola a while
thumbs up.
back, right? Sold
Yeah,
Thumbs Up, legend who made Thumbs Up, then made Bisleri. So definitely, it's I don't know what it is about Tata as a brand, but
hmm.
whenever like they do anything, you always it's like, oh, it's okay, they've gone to Tata. It's one of those things. There's a
Yeah,
certain level of that level of trust is something which I don't think any other brand has in the country. And
yeah,
it kind of shows this. I mean, it's like Bisleri and Tata coming together just makes sense. It seems like a good
yeah.
home for it.
Two super trustworthy brands. What do you make of the potential phone pay acquisition of Zest Money?
Wasn't this in the was this in the plan for a while now? I mean, there were rumors of PhonePe trying to acquire someone. I didn't know if it was Zest Money or not,
Huh.
but
I
there were
think
rumors.
PhonePay's been generally on like a bit of a acquisition-y
Mm,
type spree. But this
yeah.
Zest Money thing was bound to happen. Again, guys, this and the next acquisition which we're going to talk about, which is Cred X Credit Vidya, both of them are a part of my 2022 prediction where I categorically said that there will be consolidation in fintech because unfortunately for Zest Money, great product, lovely founders, but that space at this buy now pay later space has been hit fairly badly even internationally. A firm which is one of the OGs in that space is screwed. Then one of the strategic investors in Zest Money, who I think had committed like a round of 50, 60 odd million, I think ended up putting only half of it. Don't quote me on the numbers, guys, but essentially they were raising money from a strategic, and the full amount didn't come through because the strategic themselves got screwed.
Mm.
But I mean, phone pay, one way or the other is a great home. I have a lot of respect for their founder, and Zest Money has fantastic founders as well. So hopefully this Milan is super prosperous for all parties combined. Okay, so next piece of news, guys, is Dayhart becomes the top revenue generating agri-tech startup in FY 2022. We should generally talk about agri-tech,
Yeah.
man. This space has been up research karke aana. Varun,
मैं
please.
करता हूँ मैं करता
Love
हूँ
the
मैं
way
करता हूँ
confidence, yeah.
We should do more
Next
agri tech.
episode.
I only
Yes.
been watching Bharat Jodo Yatra. That's my agri tech in viewing
Oh my
experience.
God. First off, it has
But
nothing to do with agri tech.
I know.
Secondly, what is with his dadi? Why is he trying to look like Nemo? It's a bit much. And third, let's hope
Let's not talk
chakras
about politics
align.
on this show.
Oh, of
We
course.
want
Yes, let's not talk
sponsors
about
and
politics.
monetization.
We don't want to be cancelled. Okay, next
Yes.
piece of news, which you'll have a
Um,
lot to talk about. Batao,
Spotify
batao.
Wrapped. So every year it's crazy, right? How people wait for Spotify Wrapped to come out so they know what they listen to the most. What is your most listened to artist? Tell me, it's
Guess
Taylor
what?
Swift. Taylor
I
Swift.
don't use Spotify, which I've told you, and you made fun of me in
I
the
know.
past. I listen
I know.
to, I use YouTube Music, which, by the way, everyone is slowly migrating to. OG, guys, OG.
Yeah.
No, but unfortunately for Dhruv, his Spotify had like four artists, and then there was one Taylor Swift, and most of his top songs were Taylor Swift, all thanks to me. What may be yours, man?
I had Kendrick Lamar was number one. I didn't really realize that how that was
Mm.
possible. But I had Kendrick Lamar, Anirudh Ravichander. There was a nice mix of like artists from across the board. But it's I feel it's also fun because they also evolve it, right? It's a new every time you kind of get a new thing, like what kind of a
You're an
listener are
adventurer.
you, etc. All
Yeah.
that stuff. So I think that's fun. And I think Jalasmi mentioned this is that it's time of the year nobody cares about any form of privacy. Like, please take my data. Tell everybody what I listen to.
Yeah.
But please tell me, you listen to Kesari at least 5 times, no, this year, at least 5 times, or was Deva
I
Deva your track?
I have not heard either of those two songs, I will be honest.
Hmm.
But I will go pretend to hear them after this
Yes,
recording and give you
it just had
updates
the
on
most
my
random introduction ever.
what, Kesaria?
Our episode this week.
Oh yeah, of course, of course. Yes. First, I have to watch that trailer and then get to these two songs. But another news, guys. This platform which I've been following for a while called Relove. It's a brand resale and circulatory facilitator. terrible description, but that's how I guess they describe themselves, has raised $700,000 in pre-seed funding, which was led by Hearth Ventures with participation from Bloom and a couple of angel investors. What do you make of this resale space, my friend?
It's been around for a bit, but I feel that the one space is actually done well in post technology. I've seen a lot of resale companies who kind of like, second-hand phones, laptops, etc. Those seem to have done well, like Cashify and a few others. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know how well the clothing side does. I don't have personal understanding of that, but I guess there is it because it still is continuing to be something which people are building brands around, building companies
Yeah.
and platforms around. Seems to be a market for it, but I don't think it's as hot as it used to be. Is my only thing. There was a time when everything was like resell this, resell that. There was
Hmm.
so many of those that came out. I remember Coot Loot a while back, which is still there in the market,
Hmm.
who kind of one of the early ones to start that off. But don't hear too much about resale lately.
Yeah, I think in the US it's obviously cooled off. I really like I think the founder of Relove used to head Oak High, which is
Mm.
a much loved, Instagram brand. I think Tata CSR initiative or some such sort of, origin story. This space is, I like their take on it because basically what they're doing is they're taking these niche brands and they're making otherwise expensive products available at cheaper prices, which in my opinion is the only use case, is one of the two use cases of resale, right? One is either I'm getting something that's usually expensive at a cheaper cost, or the second one is collectibles, which is
Mm.
a space that companies like First Dibs or the Real Real have done a good job of. But let's see how the space evolves in the Indian context.
Yes, and then Kamas. Oh, sorry, Kamas Investments Private Limited, an arm of Singapore's state-owned fund. I can't pronounce anything. Yeah, Temasek
Temasek
Holdings
Holdings.
just bought 98 million shares of Zomato. Um, so why should I bother with this news? Is my point. I'm
What
having a day,
a
aren't I?
You really are. Today you've been in all sorts of moods, from tsunami to Kama struggling with the
This is so.
pronunciation. But in any case, I know this piece of news is interesting because Temasek, obviously picked up that 1.14%, and
Yeah,
parallelly Alibaba has, quietly
exited.
divested and is steadily, unbundling its Indian corpus. So, more interesting, fun things happening on the stock exchange, especially with
Yeah,
all of last year's IPO'd
yeah.
companies. In
But
more
that
interesting news,
it's been a trend in general, right? You've had a lot of these
China piecing
Chinese
out.
companies just kind of slowly kind of slink out. We also haven't heard enough about any news about Xiaomi in recent times as well, right? I mean, nothing
Dude,
good
have
anyway.
you seen what is happening in China? It
I
is
have.
like, uh, I, I don't know if it's like scary or inspiring. Like, I would hate to be
It's a
in China
mixture
right
of
now
both, is what I
myself.
would call it.
Yeah, like imagine protesting against, and the problem obviously with a lot of this news is it's difficult to tell, what is legit versus what isn't, because most foreign media has been banned from China.
Yeah.
But if they're able to, cause a little bit of tingling in in
G.
all things, yes, in G's petticoat, then that would be an interesting
Oh man, we're gonna get
outcome
cancelled after this
nonetheless.
episode, aren't we? Okay.
But Netflix is wants to make more than just
Mobile
uh
games.
yes. What are they doing? Tell us, sir.
Um, so mobilegamer.biz actually spot the fact that they've put up job listings for game director, art director, technical director as well. So
Hmm.
for their LA based studio. So they also look at obviously they've had like producer, engineer, etc. So they seem to be kind of moving into something which is one second. Sorry. So they seem to kind of like they're hiring for a project they describe as a brand new AAPC game.
Hmm.
So I think it's interesting. Netflix is really, and you're seeing more and more of the game stuff coming out on Netflix. You're seeing it more prominently there on the app as well. Some of the trailers have been. I've been a person who doesn't play the games but likes to watch game trailers. I just
Hmm.
enjoyed the storytelling in most games lately. I'm super excited for Last of Us. First trailer dropped of that. And I think it's interesting. It's a great space for someone like Netflix to go to because a lot of their shows can actually become great games, and vice versa.
Yeah, that's an interesting, like, spin to put on it. Moving on, would you
Why
like
is
to
it an
read
interesting
out?
spin? Tell me, why do you call it an interesting spin?
Oh my God, Varun. Are you getting a long winded answer out of me for Apoor Dutt on Twitter who says I
Yes.
ramble? Um, no, what's my. No, I think, obviously Netflix has, and Reed Hastings has always said this, right? Their competition is not another streaming platform, it's sleep.
Yeah.
And if there's any trajectory to look at or follow, it is that Netflix has to do one of two things, not one of two things, but both of these two things. One is appeal to a
Mm,
younger consumer, and that younger consumer is not necessarily watching TV shows on their phone. They're
mm,
playing games. And I think this move, in my opinion, is a better move than what, Instagram's trying to do with Reels or YouTube's trying to do with Shorts, where they're
mm,
trying to compete with TikTok.
yeah.
I think Netflix is angling this in a much more, in my opinion, holistic way, where they're getting that, younger Gen Z user,
Yeah.
and they're widening their mission statement, which is our competition is sleep, and what are the other use cases, which help them sort of put a fight against that very stoic, competitor.
Yeah.
But that would be my tippany on this piece of news.
Speaking of Stoic, did you see Sam Fried's
Freed.
SBF's interview with Andrew Ross Hawken? Because I didn't see it. You've seen it. You had many
Yes.
things to say about it. A lot of lovely language was used on our
Oh
Slack
my
group when
God.
you were explaining how that was. But please explain for people who have not seen that interview. I just saw like the thumbnail. I'm like, okay, I don't want to see this. It's just going to be one of those like random things.
So my exact words, ladies and gents, were BC Sam Freed Chomu's interview with Andrew Sorkin, which explains which explains my general sentiment towards. Do that interview was painful. It was like watching Adam Newman at it again, except the only
Mm.
difference in between Adam Newman and SBF is like a cranky little like wacko jacko, and Adam
Mm.
Newman was this,
Yeah, but had
gaslighting.
persona, had has a vibe.
Yeah, but dude, like this guy he's chilling in the Bahamas. He seems to be remorseful, but like his remorse is very I will make good. It's very messiah. Like everything about
Mm.
him is this, very white man savior complex. And even in his interview, a lot of that is what was being projected out. Andrew Sorkin was great. I think he asked all the
As
right and
always,
all the
yeah.
tough questions without getting agitated like me. But just most painful interview to watch.
So, if somebody wants to see it's interesting you said God complex, right? A while back, Nasir Yasin, the Nas Daily, he had done a
Hmm.
video where he'd met him,
Hmm.
and he'd done this one of those Nas videos where he just met him and talked with the youngest billionaire or whatever like that and all that stuff. If you go back to that video in this context, it's very interesting to see and the way he talks to understand his mindset. Because there he's literally is talking like a messiah, but that time he was doing well. He's kind of
Hmm.
giving back. He was going to save the planet and all that stuff. So it's a great video to go back in this context for anyone who wants to get an idea of saying this is always how he behaved. He's just now
Yeah.
that everything's kind of come out is that you're looking at him in this way.
Yep. And last three pieces of news. Number one, Reliance backed Geo platform launches TikTok alternative in India in partnership with, who would have guessed, Rolling Stone of all people and
Hmm.
Creative Land Asia. What do you make of this, my friend?
So there have been many TikTok alternatives. And I think there's a great article which Signal put out on YouTube Shorts and Reels and how they've actually kind of stuck through while all the Indian, rather TikTok clones haven't been able to kind of grow over time because it requires a certain amount of investment to build something like this out. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you got to kind of see how this kind of flows, but um, Reels and YouTube Shorts are far ahead of everybody else right now. The Indian
Yeah.
alternatives haven't been able to keep up, haven't been able to put in that kind of capital into the mix. And also, I've been hearing some rumors that you might have someone coming back. We don't know when, but we spoke about this thing a few months ago about
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
some job listings for TikTok. So there have been rumors around the mix. Nobody knows when, but it seems
Hmm.
like a matter of time. But it'll be interesting if TikTok comes back sometime next year and you have this entire landscape kind of changed. Right? Everyone's going to look at this so differently. But
Yeah. And so much money is going to, immediately evaporate because of all the desi clones who try to obviously replicate
Yeah,
TikTok's magic in India. None of them have been, sure shot slam dunks or successes.
yeah,
So let's see what happens to them. And last two pieces of news: the Boohoo Group is all set to enter the Indian fashion field through Mintra. This is
mm,
right after, in fact, Nykaa announced them bringing Revolve to the Indian shores,
yeah,
which also is a well-known and well-loved fashion brand. Now, obviously, the difference in between Boohoo and Revolve, which talks about the difference in the strategy in between Mintra and Nykaa, is Boohoo is more like fast, sasta tikao type
mm,
fashion. A Revolve is slightly more high end, premium. But interesting, no? Like, all these guys are now
yeah.
saying, let's go back to the game of bringing international labels to Indian shores and seeing if those become ways to acquire consumers.
Yeah, and also instead of acquiring, let's say, local brands or local startups in that sense in this space, this is the route they're taking, which maybe kind of also shows that maybe the consumer is also looking for slightly more international brands,
Evolved international, yeah.
evolved brands in that sense. Also, kind of gives people a way to kind of look at this from a very like aspirational point of view. It's okay, it's an international
Hmm.
brand. That stuff hasn't gone away, and I don't think it ever will go away. So, seeing more and more of this happen. But what I'm interested to see is, will there where's that breakout Indian brand in this space which we still haven't seen in a while?
Which we're going to talk about in just a bit. And last
Yes.
30 seconds on Vogue enters the local language space in India. Their new editor, Megha Kapoor, has been shaking things up, and not just with her, diverse looking covers and her more sort of, compelling storylines for all things Vogue editorial, but on social media, they finally embraced the motherland, and in fact released one of their classic formats of makeup videos or whatever else with Tamanna
Mm,
Speaks. What is her last
yeah.
name? You should know this.
But yeah.
Tamanna.
But yeah.
There you go. Yeah, so what do you make of Vogue finally embracing Indian shows?
It's about time, right? And anyway, Condé Nast has been going through a bit of a change in terms of how they look at themselves. They look at themselves more as a content company now across all
Hmm.
their brands. You're seeing them pushing a lot more towards digital content, a lot of IPs being created around all the brands they have. So it makes sense for them to move in this direction because you can't just stick to English, especially in the kind of category they're at.
Hmm.
You For you to kind of grow and for you to be able to kind of build properties at scale, you have to go towards local languages. And I feel
Yeah.
it's a little late, but better late than never.
Yup, yup, yup. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about Bewakoof and Aditya Birla Fashion, but also like digging into that category of independent fashion brands and what's been happening there. We also want to talk about this story, which I've been waiting to talk about for a while, which is the whole Bob Iger coming back into Disney. I'm a huge Bob Iger fanboy, so I've dug in deeper into this, retro most of the articles, most of the reports there. So there's lots of learnings there, more than just what the story is about. There's lots of learnings there for people to kind of look at. um, Chat GPT, which will one day take over this podcast and
Three.
chat in both our places. It will be Think Fast with GPT. No longer with us. लात मिलेगा लात हम दोनों को.
And
And
the last
finally,
story will be,
the brands which you love to wear, which is athletic brands.
of course. Look at me wearing two athletic brands. I look like a fucking penguin in my sweaters
Fly,
because
fly,
Delhi is cold.
fly, fly.
Yes, because penguins
So we're going
fly.
to talk about
Nice one.
athletic
Nice one.
brands and just generally talking about that entire space. Also, really, I feel we need to talk about from an Indian context as well. We haven't seen too many of those kind of crop up from here, but we'll tap into all of that and more after this very, very long and like very long introduction to this episode of Think Fast, where Jalasmi has not told us at any point in time, guys, you're just talking. We're 25 minutes in and or 20 odd minutes in and we're still in the introduction. We'll see you guys on the other side of this break. Welcome back to Think Fast, where we are here with Aditya Birla and I am Bewakoof. Uh,
Please knock yourself out. For Apoor Dutt, one more joke. One more joke. Given that he likes you so much. Phil Dubara Bolo. Encore.
but tell me, what's happened with Bewakoof and Aditya Birla Fashion?
So what has happened is Aditya Birla Fashion, specifically through their brand Tomorrow, spelled as TMRW, has essentially announced a investment, quote unquote, of pegged anywhere in between, I think, 100 to 200 odd crores, to
Mhm.
acquire about a 70 to 80% stake in Bewakoof. Bewakoof, obviously, for those of you who are uninitiated, is one of those OG, sasta tikao but very cool, funky t-shirt brands with a large focus on D2C. So their focus
Mm.
largely was on sales through their own websites as well as sales through other marketplaces like Flipkart, Myntra, and the likes. They've obviously had a very interesting story. I think they've been in business for a while. They've been in business from like 2012, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and of course, if you look at the Indian fashion landscape, it's been notorious for not churning out too many winners, right? Which we'll get to in just a bit. But if I had to throw this question at you, Bewakoof versus Soul Store, given that you mentioned you're a investor in
Yes,
Soul
I'm an
Store,
investor in Soul Story. Yes.
yeah, what do you think is the difference? What do you think is the difference in strategy, and also what do you think this means for Aditya Birla Fashion or tomorrow more specifically?
So this category of fashion, right, has always done well, and I feel brands like Bewakoof and Soulstore, the things they've done right has primarily been the fact that you realize that the stuff that you have on the t-shirt. Soulstore obviously started off with a very clear focus on merchandising, on getting those licensing rights and building stuff off of, let's say, if I'm a Marvel fan, if I'm a fan
Yeah.
of any specific fan merchandise kind of a thing, then I would
Hmm.
buy that. But they actually have grown a lot by focusing on saying, "Okay, you coming to buy that, but you like the quality of the clothes, so you're ending up buying a lot more of their non merch kind of clothing. So you're getting a
Yeah.
lot of the solids, getting a lot of that
And
stuff.
Soul Store is slightly pricier than Bewakoof. I think they've priced
Yeah.
themselves well.
Yeah, the price points are well, and honestly, and if this is something we heard from consumers as well, is the fact that people genuinely like the product. Like I've worn a bunch of their clothes, and I really like the quality they do.
Hmm.
Bewakoof as well, I feel at some point they've really got that whole cultural nuance right. Just people like to wear this stuff on their t-shirts. People don't buy, and this is actually something which I learned from someone who does fan merchandise
Hmm.
for a bunch of creators and stuff like that. And they were telling me that even if a creator wants to make something which is just very classy, etc., people don't buy it. But they have like a
Yeah.
loud line on top, which is really like fun, expressive. People buy that a lot, and I think that goes across clothing. We like to
Yeah.
wear fun stuff written on our t-shirts, like I am wearing right now. But maybe I'm a little more subtle in that sense. I'm wearing a Venn diagram on my t-shirt, but I feel that's what's really worked for them as brands. But I'm trying to see how this kind of what this does for Aditya Birla Fashion, right? What are they going to really plug in? Are they going to push them to do a lot more retail? Because that's where like brands like Soul Store have gone, right? They've really gone like offline,
All in.
actual
Yeah.
retail, and really kind of like really built more and more stores. I'm gathering this is where even Bewakoof will kind of move towards, because that seems to be where a lot of growth is happening.
Yeah, and Aditya Birla obviously has made a bunch of purchases
Mm.
this year. I think they are the ones who also acquired Masaba, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, for them acquiring Bewakoof gives them a headway into this younger, more old Gen Z, early millennial kind of age group. I think, without commenting too much on the deal, because obviously I don't have, information beyond whatever's been shared. I think the larger story over here is the case for independent fashion brands, right? If you look
Yeah.
at the landscape in India, apart from potentially the Soul Store as
Mm.
one of the younger brands, Fab Ali to some extent, Fab Ali that
Yeah.
has India, that affordable Indian wear a type brand that's obviously made some noise on Instagram. But if you look at some of the OG players, right, the ones that have really scaled have been the likes of, for example, the W Group, W and Aurelia,
Mm.
Fab India, for whom a considerable chunk of their revenue, still comes from fashion and
Yeah.
ethnic fashion. Go Colors, which of course IPO'd back in 2021. Which year are
Mm.
we in? Yeah, 2021. And Manyavar, which we've discussed previously on
Yeah.
Think Fast. But apart from these, the number of dead fashion brands that these giants stand on is just, the number of graves is just endless, because so many people have tried to crack fashion, but obviously the larger challenges with fashion end up being supply chain, inventory management, a poor turnaround time of these inventories, staying ahead of trends, staying ahead of design. And hence, fashion's genuinely been fairly notorious as a category to not just invest in, but even start up in. Do you know what I mean? Like you'll see a lot
Yeah.
of and when I say startup in, I mean more so through the lens of raising a shit ton of money from large VCs in India. You very rarely see those kind of fashion pitches. So fashion generally seems to be notorious. If I had to ask you specifically in this realm of fast fashion, which again no Indian brand has been able to crack, which is why something like a Club Factory and a Shein gained so much market share in
Hmm.
record time of them launching in India. Despite being a manufacturing hub, what do you think Indian entrepreneurs don't get about, either consumers' consumption of fashion or just fashion in general?
I feel it's all there's a strong focus on distribution that's lacking, right? If you look at
Hmm.
the kind of like white label brands that, for instance, some Mintra has been able to build out,
Yeah.
some of the others in that sense, those have really scaled. If you look at the bunch of brands within that category, on the other end, what I feel also has happened is that the brands which have survived have not tried to become mass brands. When
Hmm.
you look at it, for instance, you've had like brands like a March Tea, or you've had a bunch of those like slightly like mid-sized or smaller ones which have stayed. A great example is also like, not it's not fast fashion, but like Bombay Shirt Company, right? They've
Yeah.
gone from one brand to now multiple brands, gone omni-channel in that sense of the word, omni brand rather. And they've been able to kind of grow. So I feel in this category, for you to do clothing, you either are doing stuff like, let's say, what a Bewakoof and a Soul Store have done, or on the other end, what you're really doing is focusing on a very niche audience and really going deep into that, because otherwise you can't compete with the amount of options consumers have on marketplaces, and so you're not going to be able to scale as much. I
Yeah.
feel that's been the big problem here, is that if you go to a Mintra, if you go to any of these apps, you're going to see so many things there. Half the brands are like, I don't even know what this brand is, and
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
in most cases they might just be white label brands from those
Hmm.
platforms themselves. I feel that's really
Yeah.
where like this is eaten away at, like there's no independent, really scaled fashion brand.
Yeah. I think obviously one other challenge that has happened specifically over the past 5 to 6 odd years, not just in India, but even internationally, is fashion's become a commodity
Hmm.
where, fashion earlier was brand led, right? You started out with your luxury brands and you got into your fast fashion lot, which was your H&M, Inditex and the likes.
Hmm.
But specifically in the past, 6 to 7 odd years, and you're right, largely prompted by the surge of the number of brands on marketplaces. And also the other thing with fashion, interestingly enough, is search has also gone from branded search to category or item or product level search, right? So consumer
Yeah.
isn't anymore necessarily searching for like Zara black dress. They're searching for black dress, and then they're finding the quickest, fastest, cheapest alternative to get that to
Hmm.
them, in the fastest sort of turnaround time. So I think what's happened, unfortunately, to fashion is this commoditization where it's more about the style, or the relevance of the product, which obviously
Hmm.
brands like Shein and Fashion Nova have done a phenomenal job of taking what Kim Kardashian wore yesterday and giving it to you for cheap, literally in like 24 hours. And I think that somewhere has not just made the consumer spoiled for choice. It's almost like it's made a brand irrelevant to a consumer because all that really matters is style. But I see some of these trends reversing, which we're going to talk about in our last story for the day. But moving on to story number two.
Yeah, story number two is actually, obviously it's been a few. I think it's been a week or 10 days since this happened. Bob Iger, the legendary Disney CEO, came back in this surprise move and became CEO again. His handpicked successor was Bob Chapek. Literally was told, I think on a Saturday or a Sunday, when that he's going to have his last day on a Monday. So that kind of a thing happened. But there's a lot that led up to that, which I think is the more interesting part. Obviously, Iger is ran Disney for 15 years, the man behind acquiring Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm, really made Disney to what it is. Also helped kind of launch Disney Plus before he kind of left with Chapek in charge.
Hmm.
And Chapek made a bunch of changes, right? Which is actually what I want to talk about, is that the changes you make when you take over a company the size of Disney, the way Disney was doing at that point of time. I mean, in his defense, he took over exactly when the pandemic hit, so he had that, and Chapek used to run their parks. But just the moves he made, and the way the business has kind of gone, that I think that sheen of Disney was kind of wearing away. And I feel that, along with just the business reality of just the numbers and how they were showing, kind of led to him being pushed out. I mean, I can get into all those details, but just like, what were your initial thoughts when you heard this news?
Um, I think there was a part of me which almost preempted this,
Hmm.
for the very simple reason that Bob Iger just refused to leave. And I think this little mess that's happened, right?
Hmm.
It takes two hands to clap. And I think in this scenario, Bob Iger taking his own sweet time to get out. Um, Bob Iger also being so readily available to jump right back into the gig
Yeah. Yeah.
after having a conversation with Kara Swisher, I think just a couple
Yeah.
of months ago at the Recode conference, where he categorically said never ever joining Disney again. I am done.
Hmm.
And he was
Yeah.
apparently supposed to become a fund owner slash fund
Yeah.
runner or VC of sorts. I don't know, man. I think there's more to this story than just Bob Chapek making the wrong moves,
Hmm.
because it couldn't have been that simple.
Of
And I
course
don't
not.
know why a predecessor who like literally handed over the reins to a successor would, you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
not be in control of that
So
situation.
I mean, I have thoughts on this, right? One is, if you look at the some of the smaller pieces and you read a bunch of articles and you kind of go deeper, you understand that is that um, one of the first moves that Chapek did, and it's one of those things, right? You go from a visionary CEO to someone who's an operator. Same thing will happen with, let's say, a Steve Jobs and a Tim Cook, where you go from vision to
Hmm.
operational powers. So why Chapek was supposedly chosen. I think you understood. I mean, if you can handle Disney Sparks logistically and have operational control over that, you can. That's something which everyone kind of looked at as the reason why he got the job, and
Hmm.
not Tom Mayer, who was one of the other people who they thought will get it, but who ended up
Yeah.
going to TikTok to be their CEO, and now is running this entire media fund called Candle Media. But
Hmm.
what ended up happening was the fact that he took power away from the creative folk and gave it to people
Yeah.
in charge of distribution. So it was one of the first moves he did, which ruffled too many feathers, because Disney has always been, especially under Iger, was a
About the
company that
creative.
gave creative people the opportunity to do what they had to do. So suddenly calls on budgets, calls on what would go, simple things, right? If you have making a movie, the distribution guys are deciding if it will go on to streaming or go on to
Hmm.
theaters, which traditionally was never done that way. It what he also did is he put one person who was almost like his right hand man in charge of all of these together, who again had no experience in entertainment.
Yeah.
And what that led to was a bunch of stuff. Like, he, I would say, had a public spat with Scarlett Johansson when that
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
Black
Yeah.
Widow piece happened as well. But in recent times, just statements he's made, I think for me the most, I mean, you, whatever you might say, that is by far the stupidest statement that if you are CEO of Disney that you can make. He said
What did he
that
say?
adults don't watch animated movies
Oh God, no.
in
Are you
a
joking?
in their earnings announcement. You
Oh
are
man,
Disney
oh man, oh
CEO.
man.
Even if you believe
Yeah.
it, you're showing bad
Hmm.
numbers. And when he was supposedly, what happened was, when he was showing the numbers, he almost was like, "Hi, it's okay. This we'll move past this," and stuff. He was very like non like
Flippant
this
about
thing
it.
about it. And he
Yeah.
then said something like this, and so it's led up to this.
Hmm.
So basically, he had internal people, including supposedly their CFO, who was totally against how he
Yeah.
was running things. You saw a lot of people kind of see the fact that they're losing their sheen, losing the whole, like, losing the buzz around a Disney movie, or this thing coming in. And the only person who had a short notice can come back and say, "Okay, I'll hold on to this fort for a few years because I've done this before in the
Hmm.
past," is Iger. Although also there are articles saying Iger was pissed off with him as well, because whenever there were any issues, etc., there's always this whole thing that you turn to your predecessor for advice or see if they can kind
Yeah.
of help out, and Chapek never did that.
Hmm.
So Iger obviously, I'm sure, has had some form of a say to make this happen. The stock immediately rose as soon as they
Hmm.
announced him coming back. I think they've made up about 150 million on just like his announcement. If not, I think more million might be more in that sense. And so yeah, so I think the interesting part is the fact that just when he's back is when everyone's talking about his strategy, right? Who does he bring back? Who does he choose to be successor? Because they brought him back for 2 years to find his successor.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the one piece which I want to close with that part from me at least, is that Tom Mayer was asked, like, would you consider coming back and being CEO? And he said, oh, for that, they'll have to acquire Candle Media. So it seems like, and Candle Media has Hello Sunshine, which is Reese Witherspoon's
Yeah,
company, and a bunch of others. So it's an interesting way to put that out there, saying, you want me to come and run this, which I can because I know how this works. Just acquire
yeah.
my company. So smart move. I say front foot पे आके खेलने वाला बोलते हैं. Front foot पे आके
Money
खिला Tom.
moves. Money moves.
Yes.
No, but one parting thought on this is it seems like the decision that was made was the Steve Jobs to Tim Cook kind of decision, because
Hmm.
Tim Cook was always criticized for not being a visionary. In
Yeah.
fact, he got a lot of heat for,
Oh
not
yeah.
having like even a percent of the charisma of Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
But Apple, at the end of the day, is an operations company, right? You
Exactly.
need to be brilliant at everything from supply chain to assembly to ensuring products hit stores. Um, as seamlessly as is possible. And it seems like Disney kind of took that call because Bob Chapek
Hmm.
is like the quote unquote potential Tim Cook. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like he was a
Yeah. Yeah.
operational behemoth within the company, and
Exactly.
evidently that seems to have backfired.
Yes. 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 What is the next story? Are we doing next? Oh wait, 1 second. We have to take a break. We'll take a break and be back with our next story, which is about the our nemesis, our future nemesis, who will take over this podcast. I'm looking at you, GPT. We'll come back with that right after this break.
Hello, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcasts Network. On Cock and Bull, Amit Doshi joins Cyrus and Shreyas after a long break. They talk about scary sheep of China and the 24-carat gold-coated steak. On Pulyabazi, Saurabh and Khyati discuss the recent report by Reserve Bank of India on municipal finance and the factors affecting it. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth shares the best ways to set goals and whether they should be time-bound or not. On Pop Rap, Snehil, Karan and Antariksh discuss the ongoing FIFA World Cup in Qatar. Catch new episodes on the IVM Pop channel. And on The Longest Constitution, Priya Mirza looks at the expansion of the freedom of movement of the citizens. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcasts.com. We have some exciting stuff for you. Follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like our shows, spread the word. Tell your friends and don't forget to rate and review them wherever you're listening to them. You'll also find all our shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Bumble, Kotak Privilege Program, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you for making this possible.
Welcome back to Think Fast, where we realize that we're making this a very long episode. This is what happens when we record Think Fast at night. Both of us have no idea how long this episode is going to go, but you are along for the ride. And also along for the ride is Chat GPT. It sounds like a very weird car name. What are you driving today? A Chat GPT.
Okay. Yes, please go tweet at Sam Altman saying your company sounds like a very weird car name. No,
Nissan
but
Chat
dude,
GPT.
अच्छा हो गया या एक और
Done, done,
जोक
done.
रेनो चैट
Uh,
जीपीटी
no.
टेस्ला
Renault is
चैट
like too high
जीपीटी
and high, too high end it sounds.
Okay, cool. No, but have you seen the takeover of like
Yeah.
GPT-3 on Twitter? It's been nuts. And also some of the examples have been insane. Like literally college essays are being written by software. Isn't
Hmm.
that wild? Like this is like the most accurate application of AI.
Yeah. Whenever these things happen, I'm equal parts fascinated, equal parts like really like Terminator
Scared.
is happening at the back of my head.
Yeah.
I can hear dead somewhere in the background happening. Because this is Skynet, right? This is Skynet happening for all of us.
Hmm.
It is bound to happen. We've been seeing this kind of coming up. I mean, even in India, right? You had a lot of these platforms, like let's say the one which like Pepper has, obviously on a much smaller level, which is kind of helping kind of make copy for
But it's built
performance
on this. It's built on this tech.
built on this tech as well, right? And so we had applications like that coming out of it from a B2B stand for a while. But just like generally what this is able to do now is like I'm fascinated, also a little terrified, but more fascinated.
Yeah. No, but I feel like the evolution has been fairly quick. So, for example,
Hmm.
like if you saw like the OG version of a GPT, right? Like it started with binary yeses or nos.
Yeah.
Then it sort of evolved to prompt based answers, right? So, like finishing a sentence or, basically the human giving cues and then the machine, sort of filling in the blanks. But this is
Mm.
literally like potha on potha on potha of information,
Yeah.
which is just being strung together in the most interesting ways. There's obviously been a lot of criticism. So, for example, I think one of the criticisms has obviously been incorrect facts being rolled out,
Mm.
or incorrect instructions or whatever else being given, which is bound to happen given that obviously this technology is built on top of mining layers and layers of human inputted data. So
Yeah.
if humans are flawed, as will be the tech, but what about this tech freaks you out? Like, is it, will writers be relevant, or what is it?
No, I feel at some point, and I've always been a believer, right, is that as much as you bring in machines to do the repetitive tasks,
Hmm.
the core foundational pieces have to come from human mind. Because, and I think it's there in the article as well, right? It says that it's problematic to fix anything which is incorrect, because it's like you can't train it to be right. It's being
Hmm.
trained on, just like, there's no ideal answer, because an ideal answer by itself is not. I
Is
mean,
a
there's no,
myth.
yeah, it's a myth. It depends on perspective. It depends on who's
Yeah.
giving it. But I feel that in a human sense is still something which is understandable. But I feel when the
Hmm.
machine is given that kind of a logic board and not trying to be just stick to the base level data, which it should kind of be checking if it's true or not, that's where it gets scary for me. Is that,
Hmm.
at some point, how can this be manipulated basis what you feed it? Is
Hmm.
where I feel the problem lies. And like, I keep watching those Boston robotics videos, and again, I'm
Yeah.
like, I look at that, I look at this, I'm like, we all know
Black
this is
Mirror.
coming. We're going to have them all
Yeah.
over our houses. We already have everyone from Alexa to Siri to everybody else there. Siri's a little stupid, so that's fine. But everybody else is there. And yeah, this is coming. We don't realize it. If you haven't seen this lovely show on Netflix called Love, Sex, and Robots, then you should watch it.
Mm-hmm. Or see Black Mirror, which like literally told the tale of all of these times. But I don't know, man. I think I hope it just prompts more of us to, and I'm not using this word, in a small myopic way, but genuinely think about how we're going to upskill ourselves,
Mm.
because do you know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
I think that I think this is what's interesting also about no code tools, right? And I know it's worlds apart in terms of level of technology and scale of application or implementation, but I think somewhere I hope the prompt it gives people is that, as humanity, we also need to take it up a notch a little bit,
Yeah.
and maybe Elon Musk actually needs to spend less of his time on fixing Twitter and more of his time on solving more pertinent problems that are plaguing this earth, like climate change and
Yeah.
basically our planet falling apart. But
And
that's my takeaway.
it's Love, Death, and Robots, not Love, Sex, and Robots. I'm just like correcting myself.
Perv, there you go. Perv is back. Perv is back. But enough on GPT-3, and let's move to the topic that I've been pushing into our conversations for the past 3 weeks. And we are finally on the 47.35th second minute coming to it, which is all things athleisure. And
Yes.
actually, not athleisure is the wrong word, but athletics brands. So,
Mm.
ladies and gents, just to give you some context, in the US specifically, there's been this, regrowth and resurgence of athletic brands. Two specific ones caught my eye. One is called Vuori, and the second one is called Tracksmith.
Mm.
And obviously, Vuori is more focused on bringing sportswear to your everyday. Tracksmith has gone all in on running, and obviously has a range of products that focus on running gear specifically is their sweet spot.
Mm.
And the interesting thing that I found about this segment is it's not like this segment has a dearth of players. You've obviously got your OGs, which is Adidas, Reebok, Nike, and the likes. Then
Yeah.
you have your, 10-year-old companies, the likes of Lululemon and Under Armour, which to date are doing well. And now you're
Mm.
seeing the next evolution into very specific, isolated use cases. And each of these companies are fairly large businesses. So, for example,
Yeah.
Vuori raised about $400 million. Not that SoftBank is any benchmark anymore, sadly, but like,
Yeah.
they raised $400 million from SoftBank Vision Fund 2. Now, in between the both of us, you obviously exercise significantly more than I do. What do you think
Yes.
is happening here? What is this unbundling that's going on?
Um, a lot of these brands are coming up in very interesting ways, right? And I feel the whole point is what they're really focusing on. The story behind the brands as well is really kind of working for them. People kind of go towards that. Apart from, let's say, Vuori or Tracksmith, I look at a brand they're called 10,000, and
Hmm.
they're a running athleisure and athletic brand, and they've been kind of growing, really focusing on runners, of not the traditional kind of runners, right? People who are like everyday runners in that sense of the word.
Yeah.
Sometimes picking up, let's say, ultra athlete, but other points picking up people who are just like someone who runs every day. Look at a brand like a Noble, which came out of nowhere to take over the entire CrossFit space, because Reebok had it for a long time. Everyone thought Nike will try and get that sponsorship afterwards, but Noble got it because Noble kind of came from, again, it's called Noble,
Hmm.
so it's kind of comes from that philosophy. So I feel that whole the way they're positioning themselves from a philosophy standpoint is really helping, and it's really helping tap into specific consumers, especially at a time when I feel just living an athletic lifestyle is becoming more and more mainstream. It's not just an athlete thing. Like, what, think of all these other brands, right? They've always had like athletes to
Yeah.
showcase their products, but you having almost everyday athletes really being showcased in different ways. I feel that's been the big growth part for brands like these.
And I think the other interesting way in which this is also being done is, again, the two pillars of marketing and distribution, right? So Vuori, for example, went all in on retail, started out as
Mm.
as D2C, but said, you know what, screw it, we need to go where the consumer is, and own them. Tracksmith, again, also, was conceived in Boston,
Mm.
which as a city is known for being obsessed with all things running, Boston
Yeah.
Marathon, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
So I think the interesting thing that's happened over here is it's almost like they've gone after a very and this is the beauty of America, right? There is power in niches. In India, if you literally had to build something for the running community, first your ASP would be significantly miserable, then your CAC would
Mm.
be insanely high, and then you've got no business to build because there isn't enough revenue contribution from this particular niche. In the US, things just happen the other way around,
Yeah.
where the smallest of niches end up becoming 100 to $150 million businesses. And the other really interesting thing, obviously, about the US is retail is still a channel that's compounding fairly quickly and fairly fast. Unlike, again, for example, India, where you're seeing more of a focus on marketplaces, on a mix of general trade, modern trade, obviously not for categories like apparel, but largely FMCG categories. But long story short, if you guys genuinely want to get a sense of what makes these brands special or unique, I would highly recommend you go to their websites, you spend time on their Instagram. I love the way they tell stories. To your point, not using athletes, using a mix of real people, models, their community, whatever else. But it's just a masterclass on using brand narratives, brand positioning to tell stories better, marrying it with the right niche, and also starting from the right market.
Yeah.
Like I said, like in Tracksmith's case, sticking to a Boston, going all in, owning that consumer, and then building brick by brick. Versus, for example, Vuori, which stands for the Californian lifestyle, which is more chill, laid back, cool, and they bring that chill, laid back, cool into the way they think of apparel, material, and the like. So, love the innovation in this space, love the way they build their brands. And before I repeat myself for the third time, that's about it.
In India, we've had a few brands. Like, I look at Tegofit as an interesting example. I know they're not massive. I know they're still pretty small in that sense, but they're interesting just from the way they kind of got into it and
Tegofit is
scale.
what?
So
Apparel
Tegofit
or?
actually started off as they made these really good yoga mats, right? And the
Hmm.
Tegofit yoga mats are amazing because they last you for years. Like, the yoga mat we have at home has lasted us. Say we bought it before the pandemic, and it's still there. It's still used on a daily basis, and it's still fine. Nothing's happened to it. They went from there to apparel. They went to
Hmm.
socks. They went to, like, shorts and tanks and t-shirts and stuff like that. They've gone into like different kinds of accessories around that. If you're someone who does like meditation or needs that extra pad there, they kind of build that in. They've slowly scaled. What I genuinely like about the brand is that it is great quality. I've often wanted to be better quality than some stuff that you get, let's say, if you buy it in fast fashion, for sure. And it really lasts. It's comfortable. Some of the other ones I've tried from an Indian context have always been, they have felt a little cheaper, especially after one wash. But
Yeah.
I feel that Tego has been one of those brands which actually lasted. Like I use Tego all the time, and it's mainly because it's just great quality. So there are examples. I think we're very early into this cycle. I mean, we can talk about a Bliss Club as another example of someone
But
kind of
India
building
is
into
not a
that.
sports country. I mean, we just have to
It's
embrace
very
the
early
fact that
stage, I feel, and it's very
I think
urban.
it's no stage because our climate just does not support playing sports all year round. Like it's just too freaking hot, man. Versus for example the US where you can literally run apart from maybe 1 month of Jan where it's 6 feet of snow. The US and even European countries for that matter are generally much more conducive to sport, and also I think in largely Western countries, sports is a way of life. Like in Europe, everyone hikes. It's like like how we
Yeah.
take a dump at like 2 p.m. Like Europeans are like climbing up some mountain. Like our chai break is there. Let me climb Mount Everest and come back down. Like
I
so
do
so
think
I,
it's
I think it's also
changing though. I
cultural.
do feel, and I think it's more a gym culture thing kind of coming in more than an outdoor culture coming in. But there is a genuine movement, because I've been looking at the fitness space in India for a while, just looking at that entire space. The
Yeah.
genuine movement towards more and more people wanting to be fitter. Might not be going outdoors and running and doing stuff like that, but there is a genuine push to do more of that. And as that category kind of scales up, um, I feel it's a matter of time before we have a bit of a breakout Indian brand. I mean, HRX is an interesting example. Has kind of
Yeah.
stayed, has grown, has gone beyond Hrithik Roshan in that sense. And I think there was a conscious call on their part to not just make it a celeb-driven brand. So HRX is a great example of a fitness brand that has really grown over time, has like very strong brand presence in that sense of the word. But we're more gym culture, like we said, because of the weather. I feel we're a more gym focused country. Although I'm seeing a lot more running and cycling, though. I'm seeing that not just in mainstream cities. I'm seeing this in like outskirts, in like tier 2, tier 3 as well. They seem to slowly be seeping into culture. Apart from Coco,
Yeah.
my favorite sport.
Oh, like Coco, like a buddy Coco.
Coco is the best sport
Coco,
ever. Coco.
of course,
I
counts
was
as a
once a
sport.
silver medalist in Coco.
That explains a lot of your life decisions.
Speaking of live
Okay,
decisions, it is time to make a decision to go for a final break and be back with recommendations. Welcome back to Think Fast, where we're still thinking about what should we recommend. I'm just trying to put on, because I've already decided. I'm just trying to act like I have still thinking. What are you recommending?
great. Look at you thinking. What is in your hands, Varun? Dikhao.
I
Jhute
actually want to
already
recommend
has
this
his
company called
recommendation.
Odd Giraffe. They're a very
Yeah, they make very
interesting
cool diaries.
D2C stationery brand. Really nice quality and like really interesting just model, right? They've kind of they're scaling this entire aspect of everything from like journals to planners, etc. Beautiful design, and it's really, you can personalize it in a nice way. So my suggestion is get yourself a yearly planner or a wellness journal from Odd Giraffe, because we're getting into December.
Cute. Look at you giving great advice to our listeners and your
Yes.
followers. I have two recommendations. My first recommendation is an emotional recommendation, which is so we had to cancel last week's recording because I unfortunately lost a school friend of mine who was all of 33 years old in like the strangest circumstances, health issues. But I think for me one big like takeaway from that whole experience was, so he's my best friend from class 10 to about 2016, 2017. We fell out of touch, as is what happens with school friendships.
Hmm.
But at his cremation and at his prayer meet, I met so many of my school friends who I haven't been in touch with because I've been a bit of a hermit for the past 7 years of building LBB. So my recommendation to you guys, which I learned through this absolutely horrible experience of losing a friend, is people who you love, people who are in your life, even if you aren't in touch with them, but they meant something to you, just send them a sweet little message saying, thinking about you, here for you whenever you need, because life is short and very, very, very weird, which is what I learned over the past 7 odd days. My second recommendation, which is
Don't run. Don't move away
out of
swiftly from such a lovely recommendation. Don't do exit stage left immediately. That is a lovely recommendation, and
I
must
am
say,
like running from
obviously,
emotions.
Yes, I will not push it on emotions, but that's a lovely one. I think everyone should really follow that one.
Yes. Oh my God. Look at me sounding like I'm on an episode of Take a Pause. But my
Yeah.
second
We need to get you
recommendation.
on Take a Pause, but that's a whole
Oh
different
my
point.
God, no, it's okay. Please don't. But my second recommendation is a plug, guys. If you are in Delhi this coming Saturday on the 10th of December, please come for LBB x Nykaa Fashion's First in Fashion Festival, which is
Woohoo!
happening at 1AQ in Mehrauli from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. We've got drinks, we've got free coffee and snacks for like the first 100 shoppers. We've literally got India's best brands in real life for you to shop from. So come on over and say hi to me because I'm going to be there.
Wow, that is amazing. I'm not going to be there, but please snacks भिजवा देना,
Yes, done. Pack karke
पैक करके courier कर
with a
देना.
pigeon.
Yes. And that's it for this episode. Alright, I thought this would be longer, but it wasn't that long. We've just managed to scrape through. I think the last segment we just went through and said, "Come on, jealous me, we will do this for you." Chak the pate, Jay Mata Di rocks.
Yes, from our your amazing terminology in the first 1 minute to ending with Jai Mata Di. Look at how far you've come, Varun. Look at how far you've come.
I have progressed through the 1 hour of this recording
Yes,
spiritually.
evolved like the apes to human
Yes.
form. But in
But
any
please, guys,
case,
by recommendation, please watch the circus trailer. It's so much fun. I
oh
can't wait
my
for
God.
more things to come. Also, if you haven't seen the trailer for this movie called Cocaine Bear, please watch it. It is bizarre, but please watch the trailer.
What
It's
do you do
it's based
with
on
your spare time?
it's
Don't
based
you
on
have
a
a
true
young
story. There
child?
was a bear that happened
Didn't
to
you just
eat an
pop a
entire packet
kid?
of cocaine.
Why are you watching bears eating cookies? What are these new things on Pornhub, Varun? Jeez.
Go to YouTube and type cocaine bear. You see what you find.
Guys, and you will get fired from your job if you do this at work. I'm just giving you a heads up. But in any case, toodles, my poodles. See you next week.
Chadals.